No one noticed the foal at first. Not really. He stood at the far edge of the auction pen, half hidden by shadows and dust, so thin his ribs looked like they might tear through his skin. His head hung low, not in rest, but in surrender. The kind of stillness that comes after hope has already packed up and left. People walked past him without slowing down, boots crunching gravel, eyes already trained on stronger animals, ones that looked worth saving. And then there was the mane. Long matted, heavy, hanging in tangled ropes over the foal's face like a curtain he was hiding behind. Most assumed it was just neglect. Another unwanted horse in a place full of them. Someone muttered, "That one won't last the week." Another shook his head and laughed softly. The auctioneer didn't even bother to hype him up. The opening bid was silence. This is where the story should have ended. But it didn't. Because standing near the back rail was a man who knew what it felt like to be overlooked. A man with only $25 left in his pocket, and more doubts than plans. His name was Evan, and he hadn't come to buy a horse, certainly not a dying foal. He'd come to kill time, maybe distract himself from the weight pressing on his chest these past months. A failed business. A recent divorce. Nights that stretched too long and too quiet. Evan told himself he was just looking. Then the foal lifted his head. For a brief second, their eyes met. The foal's gaze wasn't wild or aggressive. It was tired. Old in a way no young animal's eyes should ever be. And in that look, Evan felt something crack open inside him, something he'd been holding together with routine and stubborn pride. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "All right, folks. Next lot. Young colt. Poor condition. Likely best for parts or—" "I'll start it," Evan said. The words surprised even him. $25, the auctioneer repeated, blinking. "Do I hear more?" Silence again. The gavel came down hard. Sold. Just like that, Evan had traded his last $25 for a foal everyone else had already written off. As the pen gate opened, the foal didn't move. His legs trembled when he tried, hooves sliding in the dirt. Evan stepped in slowly, palms open, heart pounding. He didn't rush. He didn't touch. He just spoke, soft, steady, the way you talk to something fragile. "It's okay," he whispered. "I've got you." The foal flinched anyway. Up close, the neglect was worse. The smell of old sweat and dirt clung to him. His coat was dull. His breathing shallow. And that mane, thick, rope-like clumps twisted together so tightly they pulled at the skin along his neck. It looked painful. It had to be painful. Evan led him into the trailer at a pace so slow it felt like time itself had stretched. Every step was a negotiation. Every breath a question mark. By the time they reached the small ranch Evan was renting on the outskirts of town, the sun was already sinking low, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. Evan unloaded the foal carefully, watching him wobble, ready to catch him if he fell. He named him Ash. Not because the foal looked like ash, but because ashes are what remain after something has burned down. And Evan knew something about starting over from that place. That first night, Ash barely touched the water. He sniffed the hay and turned away. He stood in the corner of the stall, pressed against the wall as if trying to disappear into it. Every sound made his ears twitch. Every movement from Evan sent a ripple of tension through his thin body. This wasn't just hunger. This was fear. Evan sat on an overturned bucket just outside the stall, exhaustion finally catching up to him. He wondered, quietly, painfully, if everyone else had been right. If buying Ash had been a mistake fueled by emotion instead of sense. If he'd just bought himself another loss. But then Ash did something strange. He lowered his head, slowly, and one thick strand of his matted mane slipped forward, brushing the dirt. Evan frowned. The clump looked heavier than the rest. Almost stiff. As Ash shifted, another piece tugged loose, and Evan noticed something dark tangled deep within the hair. Not mud. Not debris. Something else. Evan stood, heart quickening. He stepped closer, careful not to spook the foal. Ash tensed, muscles tightening, ready to bolt, but he didn't. He stayed. Barely. "It's all right," Evan murmured again. "I won't hurt you." He reached out, fingers trembling, and gently lifted part of the mane. What he saw made his breath catch. Because buried deep inside that matted mess, pressed against Ash's neck, was something that didn't belong there. Something wrapped, tied, and deliberately hidden. And in that moment, Evan realized two things at once. First, this foal hadn't just been neglected. Second, whatever was hidden in that mane was about to change everything. Evan didn't pull it out right away. Every instinct screamed at him to act fast, to grab whatever was hidden in Ash's mane and figure out what he'd just stumbled upon. But the foal stiffened the second Evan's fingers lingered too long. His ears pinned back, breath hitching, body coiled like a trapped animal bracing for pain. This wasn't just fear of touch. This was memory. Evan slowly let his hand fall away and stepped back. He forced himself to breathe, even though his heart was racing now. Whatever was hidden in that mane, whatever secret Ash had been carrying, it wasn't going anywhere tonight. And pushing now could cost him the only fragile trust he'd earned. So Evan did the hardest thing. He waited. That night, Evan barely slept. He lay on the old couch in the ranch house, staring at the ceiling as images replayed in his mind. The way Ash flinched, the unnatural weight in the mane, the sense that this foal's story ran deeper than hunger or neglect. Around midnight, he pulled out his phone and scrolled aimlessly, trying not to think about the fact that he'd spent his last $25 on a horse who might not survive the week. He wondered if this was who he'd become, someone chasing broken things because he didn't know how to fix himself. By dawn, he was back in the barn. The early morning light filtered through the slats, soft and pale. Ash was still standing, exactly where Evan had left him, eyes half-lidded, legs trembling slightly under his weight. He hadn't lain down all night. That alone told Evan how deep the fear ran. Horses only sleep standing when lying down feels too dangerous. Evan started with water. He didn't force it. He just refreshed the bucket and stepped away. Minutes passed. Then Ash leaned forward, sniffed, and took a tentative sip. Just one. But it was enough to make Evan's chest tighten with hope. Good, Evan whispered, like he was afraid the word itself might scare Ash off. Next came the mane. Evan fetched a pair of blunt grooming scissors, a soft brush, and a towel. He sat down on the straw several feet away from Ash and waited again, letting the foal watch every move. When Ash didn't bolt, Evan inched closer, slowly, deliberately, narrating every step in a calm, steady voice. "I'm just going to help you," he said. "That's all." The first cut was careful. Evan didn't go near the skin. He snipped the outer edge of one thick clump, letting it fall into his hand. Ash flinched, but didn't pull away. Evan froze, then relaxed when the foal did. Minutes turned into an hour. With each snip, more of Ash's neck was revealed, raw in places, irritated, rubbed nearly hairless from the weight of the mats. This wasn't accidental neglect. This mane had been left like this for a long time. Long enough to hide something. Long enough to intentionally hide something. And then Evan saw it again. A strip of faded fabric. Wrapped tight. Knotted. His stomach dropped. Carefully, Evan separated the hair around it. What emerged made his breath hitch so sharply he had to steady himself against the stall wall. It was a thin leather cord looped around Ash's neck, old, cracked, but strong. Attached to it was something small, wrapped in oilcloth and twine. A bundle. Ash reacted instantly. His head jerked up, panic flashing in his eyes. He tried to step back, hooves scrambling in the straw, breathing fast and shallow. Evan dropped the scissors and raised both hands, backing away. "It's okay," he said quickly. "I won't take it. I promise." The foal froze, chest heaving. Slowly, so slowly, he settled again. The moment passed, but the tension lingered like a held breath. Evan didn't sleep much the next night either. He called a local vet the following morning, explaining Ash's condition, the weight loss, the fear responses. He didn't mention the bundle. Not yet. Some things felt too fragile to speak aloud. The vet arrived that afternoon and confirmed what Evan already feared: severe malnutrition, dehydration, muscle wasting. Ash was young, but his body had been pushed dangerously close to its limit. "He's been through something," the vet said quietly, watching the way Ash flinched at sudden movements. "Not just starvation." That night, Evan sat with Ash again, this time reading aloud from an old book he'd found on the shelf. It didn't matter what he read, just the sound of a human voice, steady and calm. At some point, Ash shifted closer. Not much. Just enough that his shoulder brushed the stall wall near Evan's knee. It felt like a victory. Days passed. Ash began eating small amounts. His eyes brightened just a fraction. He still startled easily, still guarded that bundle in his mane like it was part of him, but he no longer trembled constantly. The bond, delicate as spider silk, was forming. And then came the moment Evan had been both waiting for and dreading. On the 5th day, Ash leaned his head into Evan's chest. It was accidental, or maybe it wasn't. Either way, Evan froze, barely breathing, afraid to break the spell. The foal stood there, trusting, vulnerable. Evan gently reached up. This time, Ash didn't flinch. With hands shaking, Evan untied the cord. The bundle slipped free and fell into his palm, heavier than it looked. Evan unwrapped the cloth slowly, heart pounding so loudly he was sure Ash could hear it. Inside was a weathered photograph, a folded note, and something small and metallic that caught the light. Evan stared, stunned, because whatever this was, it proved that Ash hadn't been abandoned. He'd been lost. And the truth behind that loss was about to pull Evan into a story far bigger and far more dangerous than he ever imagined. Evan didn't recognize the man in the photograph at first. The image was old, creased so deeply it looked like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. Dust clung to the corners. But as Evan wiped it gently with his sleeve, the details sharpened, and his stomach tightened. It was a younger man, standing beside a mare and a foal. The resemblance was unmistakable now. Same narrow blaze on the forehead. Same dark eyes. Same slight tilt of the ears. Only this foal looked healthy, strong, curious, alive. The mare stood protectively close, her head lowered toward the colt. And the man? He was smiling. Evan unfolded the note next. The paper was thin, the ink faded but legible. If you find this, please help him. His name is Ash. He was loved once. I promise. That was it. No address. No signature. Just a plea, written by someone who had known what it meant to lose everything. Evan felt his throat tighten. Ash shifted beside him, sensing the change. His muzzle brushed Evan's shoulder, tentative, questioning. Evan swallowed hard and rested a hand against the foal's neck, grounding himself in the warmth of living flesh. You were someone's whole world, Evan murmured. And suddenly the fear made sense. Ash hadn't been born wild. He hadn't been unwanted from the start. He'd been cared for, maybe deeply, before something had gone terribly wrong. The matted mane wasn't just neglect, it was a hiding place. A last attempt to keep something safe. A story tied into his own body. Evan spent the rest of the night researching missing horse reports, old ranch closures, anything that might connect to the photo. The metallic object from the bundle, a small, dented tag, turned out to be a training marker, the kind used by private breeders. Rare. Expensive. Not something you'd find on an abandoned foal by accident. The next morning, Evan posted a photo, careful not to reveal Ash's location, on a local equine rescue forum. He didn't expect much. By noon his phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. One message stopped him cold. That foal looks like one that disappeared during the Cedar Ridge fire 3 years ago. Evan's pulse spiked. Cedar Ridge had been a disaster. A fast-moving wildfire that tore through miles of land, destroying homes, ranches, lives. People had fled with what they could carry. Some animals were never found. Evan called the number immediately. The woman on the other end of the line spoke slowly, carefully, like she was afraid of hoping too much. She told Evan about a small breeding operation run by a man named Thomas Hale. He'd lost his wife, then his ranch, then nearly everything else. He'd tried to evacuate the horses, but not all of them made it out. One foal had vanished. Thomas never stopped looking, the woman said softly. But he didn't survive the winter after the fire. The words landed like a weight. The note. The photo. The bundle hidden in Ash's mane. Thomas hadn't abandoned Ash. He'd been separated from him. And Ash, terrified, alone, had survived something no one expected him to. Evan sat in the stall that evening, staring at the fading sunlight spilling across the straw. Ash stood close now, no longer pressed into corners. When Evan leaned back against the wall, Ash lowered himself carefully, awkwardly, and lay down for the first time since arriving. It felt like trust. But the peace didn't last. 2 days later, a truck rolled slowly down the dirt road leading to Evan's ranch. Evan noticed it immediately, dust plume low, deliberate pace. His gut tightened. No one came out here unless they meant to. The truck stopped. A man stepped out. His movements were sharp, impatient. He scanned the property like he was looking for something that belonged to him. Evan met him halfway. "You the one with the foal?" the man asked, voice flat. Evan didn't answer right away. "I heard about a horse matching that description," the man continued. "Brown. Thin. Bought cheap at auction. I think there's been a mistake." Evan felt Ash shift behind him in the barn. "There hasn't," Evan said carefully. The man's jaw tightened. "That horse is worth money. A lot more than $25. And just like that, the danger Evan hadn't wanted to imagine became very real. Because suddenly, the bundle in Ash's mane wasn't just a memory. It was proof. And proof makes people desperate. That night, Evan barely slept. Every sound outside made him sit up, heart hammering. He moved Ash to the far stall, double-checked the gates, and kept his phone charged and close. In the quiet hours before dawn, Evan sat beside Ash again, one hand resting on the foal's shoulder. "I won't let them take you," he whispered. "Not now. Not ever." Ash flicked an ear. Then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned into Evan's touch. For the first time, Evan realized something else. Saving Ash wasn't just about rescuing a horse. It was about standing between a past that wanted to reclaim him and a future he deserved. And the real test? It was coming. The next morning felt wrong before anything even happened. The air was too still. No birds. No breeze. Just the low creak of wood as the barn settled and the distant hum of a highway miles away. Evan woke before sunrise, already tense, as if his body had sensed the trouble before his mind caught up. Ash was on his feet when Evan entered the barn. Watching the open doorway. His ears flicked toward every sound, muscles tight beneath skin that was finally, slowly, starting to fill out. "You feel it too, don't you?" Evan whispered. He checked the gates again. But he moved quietly, deliberately, keeping his movements calm even though his chest felt tight. The man from yesterday hadn't come back, but Evan knew better than to assume that meant safety. People who smelled money didn't let go easily. By mid-morning, Evan's phone rang. A known number. He let it ring twice before answering. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you," the voice said. No greeting. No introduction. "Say man." Evan recognized it instantly. "He belongs with me," Evan replied, keeping his voice even. There was a pause. Then a short laugh. "You paid $25 for a dying foal. Don't pretend this is about love." Evan looked at Ash, standing just behind the stall rail, watching him with quiet intensity. "Sometimes," Evan said, "that's exactly what it's about." The call ended. An hour later, another truck appeared at the end of the road, this one older, dented, pulling a small livestock trailer. Evan's stomach dropped. He didn't wait for it to reach the house. He stepped outside, planting himself between the driveway and the barn. 2 men got out this time. The first was the one from before. The second stayed near the truck, arms crossed, eyes scanning. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was pressure. "Let's make this easy," the first man said. "We know what that horse is. We know where he came from. And we know what he's worth." Evan shook his head. "You know what he could be sold for. That's not the same thing." The man's eyes hardened. "You don't have papers." "I have proof," Evan replied. That gave them pause. "Proof doesn't feed a horse," the man shot back. "You can't even afford a vet bill if he relapses." That one hit close to home. Evan felt the familiar sting of inadequacy, the same voice that had followed him since his business failed, since his marriage ended. The voice that said you're not enough. Ash stepped forward suddenly, pressing his muzzle against the stall rail, eyes fixed on Evan. Not panicked. Not afraid. present. Evan straightened. "I'm enough," he said quietly. The standoff lasted another tense minute before the men backed off, for now. But Evan knew they'd be back. Or worse, they'd try something when he wasn't looking. That afternoon, Evan made a decision. He loaded Ash into the trailer, not to run, but to protect him. He drove to the nearest equine rescue center, a place he'd volunteered once years ago, back when his life still felt like it was going somewhere. He explained everything: the auction, the bundle, the men, the threats. The director listened without interrupting. When Evan finished, she nodded once. "You did the right thing bringing him here." For the first time in days, Evan exhaled fully. Ash was placed in a quiet paddock, monitored, fed, cared for. Over the next few days, his transformation accelerated. The hollow look in his eyes softened. His steps grew steadier. He began to nicker softly when Evan approached, a sound so small, so hopeful, it nearly broke Evan apart. And then came the call Evan hadn't expected. The rescue had tracked down Thomas Hale's sister. She arrived just before sunset, hands trembling as she stood at the fence, staring at Ash. Tears streamed down her face before she even spoke. "That's him," she whispered. "That's my brother's Foal." She told Evan about Thomas's final weeks, how he'd searched evacuation centers, shelters, burned fields. How he'd believed Ash was still alive somewhere. How he'd hidden the photo and note, praying someone kind would eventually find them. "He trusted whoever found Ash," she said softly. "Trusted that they'd do what he couldn't anymore." Evan felt something shift inside him then. Not pride. Not triumph. Purpose. But the story still wasn't finished. 2 days later, legal papers arrived. The men from the auction had filed a claim, citing breeding value and improper transfer. The rescue's lawyers stepped in. Evidence was presented. The bundle. The tag. The fire records. It was messy, stressful, exhausting. Through it all, Evan stayed close to Ash. The Foal had changed. He no longer flinched at touch. He followed Evan willingly now, matching his pace, leaning into him during quiet moments. The bond was unmistakable, not ownership, but choice. Weeks passed. Finally, the ruling came down. Ash would remain with the rescue, under Evan's care. The men never came back. On the evening it became official, Evan sat in the paddock as the sun dipped low, Ash grazing nearby. The Foal lifted his head and walked over, resting his muzzle against Evan's shoulder. Evan laughed softly, emotion catching in his throat. "You know," he said, "I didn't save you." Ash breathed out, warm and steady. "You saved me." The first time Ash ran, Evan cried. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a few uneven strides across the paddock, legs still learning how to trust the strength returning to them. But then Ash lifted his head, mane freshly trimmed and finally free, and something changed in his posture. The hesitation vanished. The weight of the past slipped away. He ran. Dust kicked up behind him as he stretched into the movement, muscles working together for the first time without pain or fear. The sound of his hooves wasn't frantic anymore. It was joyful. Evan stood frozen at the fence, hands gripping the rails, chest tight with emotion he didn't try to hide. Months earlier, this Foal had barely been able to stand. Now he was flying. The rescue staff watched quietly, some smiling, some wiping their eyes. They'd seen recoveries before, but not ones that carried this much story inside them. Ash slowed and trotted back to Evan, stopping inches away. He didn't bolt. He didn't shy. He lowered his head and pressed his forehead gently into Evan's chest. Connection. Not ownership. Not obedience. Trust. That night, Evan sat alone with Ash as the sky darkened and the stars came out one by one. He told Ash things he hadn't told anyone else, about losing his business, about the empty house after the divorce, about the nights he'd wondered if starting over was even worth the effort. Ash listened in the way horses do, not with words, but with presence, with warmth, with a quiet steadiness that said you're not alone anymore. Weeks turned into months. Ash grew stronger. His coat shone. His eyes sparkled with curiosity instead of fear. He began basic training, not harsh, not rushed. Evan let Ash set the pace. Some days were confident. Others, Ash needed space. Evan honored both. One afternoon, as Evan brushed Ash in the fading sunlight, he noticed something unexpected. Ash no longer guarded his mane. The place where the bundle had once been hidden was just hair now. Free. The past had finally loosened its grip. The rescue center decided to share Ash's story online, not for attention, but to raise awareness. The video went viral. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. People from all over the world shared their own stories of loss, rescue, and second chances. And tucked among them was one message that stopped Evan cold. "Thank you for finding him." It was from Thomas Hale's sister. Attached was a short note she said Thomas had written years ago, never sent, but saved. "If Ash survives without me, I hope he finds someone who listens to him." Evan closed his eyes, overwhelmed. "I think I did," he whispered. Months later, paperwork was finalized. Ash was officially Evan's. No auction. No price. No transfer of money. Just choice. The first ride didn't happen right away. Evan waited. He waited until Ash nudged the saddle himself. Until he stood calm and curious. Until the trust was mutual. When Evan finally climbed on, it wasn't dramatic. No crowd. No camera. Just a man and a horse moving forward together. As they walked slowly across the field, Evan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not relief, not triumph, but peace. Ash's story didn't erase Evan's past. But it gave it meaning. And that's the thing about second chances. Sometimes they don't arrive loudly. Sometimes they cost just $25. And sometimes they save both lives. If this story touched you, if you believe that compassion can change the course of a life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories that remind us why kindness still matters. Because somewhere right now, another Ash is waiting to be seen.